Everybody, when y'all are all good, give me the thumbs up. We'll get started. All right. Before we get going here, we're going to take a second and allow everyone to introduce themselves to you all. I am Justin Bamberg of Bamberg Legal, and I am representing Ricky and Travis Price.
I'm Travis Price.
And my name is Montreal Belton. I'm a local attorney here in Rock Hill, criminal defense attorney, and I'm representing Travis only in the municipal charge that he has.
What we're here to do today is, if you remember when we were standing out in the hot sun in front of the jail trying to get Ricky and Travis out, we said that we were going to find out how we got in this position, and we have been working nonstop. And what I'm going to show you today is a couple of things. We're going to go through the original statement from the city of Rock Hill with regards to this incident. It's not accurate. I'll put it bluntly. There's a lot in there that's just not true. And this idea of investigating and that it takes all this amount of time may be the case sometimes, but sometimes if you want the truth, all you do is a little work and you find it. Thanks in large part to the city of Rock Hill, Travis was painted as some criminal and painted as somebody who fought police and someone who just wouldn't listen to the police. And if you look at comments and you look at what people are saying in the public, they believe that. They believe that. And we're going to fix that today because that ain't the truth. I hold in my hand, this is sled catcher. For those who don't know, with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, they track records and things like that. No arrest data. Travis has no criminal background. No arrest. This is one of the blankest pages you'll ever see, unless your computer just runs out of ink. This is who they're talking about. No arrest data. No criminal record. And I've got it up on the screen for anybody who... I'm going to read a piece of this. This is the memoranda. When information is put out by the government, they dang well need to make sure that it's accurate, especially if you're going to talk about a citizen, okay? Again, citizens who are innocent until proven guilty. And this memoranda is addressed to media outlets, to the media, so they can disseminate this to the public, because that is what the media does in this country. To the media outlets. Date June 23rd, 2021. Arrest of Ricky Roderick Price and Travis Price. And I want to read this one particular piece here. Officers began searching Price, referring to Ricky, when his brother, Travis Price, arrived on scene and approached officers. Travis Price attempted to gather the belongings officers were removing from Ricky's person and was told to move back. Travis then used his body to bump the officers backwards as he continued trying to get near his brother to reach for the belongings while yelling belligerently. Travis was forced back and told he was under arrest for interfering and physically contacting officers. Travis shoved officers, refusing to comply with orders to place his hands behind his back. Officers pushed Travis against a large tank located behind him, telling him to put his hands behind his back, ... etc., etc., etc. Not true. And we're going to show you it's not true, because there was a witness video that caught a lot of this interaction that day, but it didn't catch everything. The convenience store that this occurred at had surveillance video, and the surveillance video fills in some gaps. And I'm going to walk you through this, okay? So I'm going to play it through a full time, and then what I'll do is I'm going to freeze it and break it down piece by piece. And there's no audio. And this video was obtained by us. And if memory serves me correctly, this was also in the possession of the Rock Hill Police Department, either before or shortly after this statement was made. I'm gonna play this, and you just watch. All right, and I'm going to go back here. So what you just watched is something that debunks almost everything that they said about Travis here. Okay? For starters, Travis has his phone. Ricky never called Travis. Ricky called his mother. That's the first thing. Right? What led Travis out there? Travis happens to be passing by. He sees his brother's car with all these police around. Travis then pulls into that gas station, parks in a regular parking spot, and walks over to see what's going on. Unbeknownst to Travis, okay, Ricky and those officers had already been talking, the cuffs had already been removed, and the agreement was already made. Hey, that's my brother, can he get my belongings? And the officer said yes. Okay. All right, here you got Travis walking. Oh, he's so belligerent that he stopped for a customer's car who was backing out of a parking spot. That's how belligerent he was, right? That's how much he wanted to interfere. What he's charged for right here, right? He wanted to hinder so bad he stopped for a car that was backing out of a parking spot. Does that look belligerent to you? He walks over. Oh, you see the young lady there, she's also an officer. Did she try to stop him? Absolutely not. Because there was no problem with him coming. Travis walks over to the officers. In that moment, you see one of the officers says, please step back. He complies. He did what he was asked, and he did what he was told. He steps back. And then he is instructed by officers, stay there, we'll let you know when you can get your brother's belongings. Okay? Does he look belligerent to any? Maybe I need new contacts. I don't see belligerent anything. I don't see anybody trying to hinder police or interfere with police. I don't see anybody throwing anything, waving their arms. Boom. What you see on camera is a law enforcement officer handing Travis Ricky's belongings. If Travis was hindering law enforcement, if he was being belligerent, it looks like they're shaking hands. Because in this moment, everything was peachy keen, everything is perfectly fine. Travis is complying and doing what he's supposed to do. Listen to the officers. Does that look belligerent? Someone please tell me when they see belligerent. Again, one of the officers beckons Travis over, reaches his hand out and hands him more of Ricky's belongings. Travis is complying. He's doing everything that was demanded and asked of him on the scene. He's yet to try and interfere in any investigation. He hasn't tried to do anything. And if you see, all the cops seem pretty cool because in this moment, Ricky is taking his jury off and stuff like that. Let's keep going here. All right, we just saw a third time law enforcement handing Travis more of his brother's belongings. And in this moment, this officer walks up. Right? And all right, let's keep going here. All right, at this point, you see this officer accosting him. He's listening to the officers that were dealing with Ricky. This particular officer was up searching the car. I don't know what he knew or didn't know in that moment, but there was obviously a problem in communication. Because you had some officers telling Travis to do this, stand there, take this. This guy comes out of nowhere and instantly treats him like he's some piece of street thug trash. And he backs up. His hands are up. This officer grabs his wrists. In this moment, what do we see? We see the officer that was handing Travis all the belongings is looking at Travis. Travis is looking at him with his arm pointed out. And you know what he was saying? Sir, I'm doing what he told me. I'm doing what... This guy wasn't trying to hear it. And then what we see, and I'm going to show you some stills, complying, hands up, doing nothing wrong, not interfering with anybody, an officer comes and grabs him by the damn throat. Grabs him by the throat and pushes him into this propane tank. And I'm sorry, unless you're a robot that doesn't need, I don't know, oxygen, nobody's going to be able to stand still with someone squeezing your windpipe. But he is the belligerent one. When did Travis bump anybody? Rock Hill needs to answer that. I mean, they had the audacity to send this to all media outlets saying X, Y, and Z about Travis. Then they can send something and tell, when did Travis do that? When did Travis use his body to bump officers? When did Travis have to be forced back and told he's under arrest for interfering and physically contacting officers? Travis didn't go contact anybody. Somebody came up wearing a badge and a uniform and started choking the kid. Not say kid. They started choking this young man. This is inaccurate. This is slanderous. Because they said all that about a young man with no criminal record. A young man who's never dealt with law enforcement like that. And I want to show you these stills here. You bear with me just a second. This is the still. These are the materials. These are the materials that law enforcement was handing Travis. Okay? All of these items belong to Ricky. But when this young man was falsely arrested, maliciously arrested and prosecuted, all of Ricky's items became his possessions when he goes to the jail. So even though this is what law enforcement handed him for him to get for his brother, when he goes and gets booked, all of this goes with him. And guess what? When he bonds out, all of this comes back as his personal belongings. These are the things that law enforcement officer was handing someone who was complying. Last time I checked, I don't know that an officer would put stuff like this in the hands of someone who was belligerent and attacking them and using his body to physically bump them and who was not listening and who was not complying. Here's the second instance that I showed you on the video with law enforcement handing this young man his brother's belongings. Still doing nothing wrong, still not interfering. And I'm sorry, if doing what law enforcement tells you to do is considered interfering, I'm pretty sure that most of us would be in jail at some point in our life. That's not how this works. Here's a third steal. Law enforcement handing Travis his brother's belongings, complying, doing nothing wrong. And here's after the attack started, and that's what I'm calling it, an attack. This young man was attacked by law enforcement on the scene. And the saddest part about this is, in this moment, what you're looking at on the screen is a cry for help, is what it is. And I'm sorry, for a lot of particularly young African American men in America, dealing with law enforcement is still scary. And I don't expect everybody to understand why, but it is. And if you can do everything right, and you can listen to what law enforcement is asking you to do, when they tell you step back, you step back. When they tell you stay there, you stay there. When they tell you here, take this, you take that. And you do everything right. And you still get attacked by an officer on the scene, and none of his buddies stop him from doing it? Travis is looking directly at the officer he was getting all the goods from. Why are you not helping me? Why are you letting this man do this stuff to me? Choked. Choked. That's what's going on here. Choked. Is that an appropriate use of force? On somebody who's doing what you... That's like me asking you to show up and I choke you because you walk in the room.
His hands up.
And where are his hands? Up. This officer choked a defenseless, innocent person. And again, the officer who was handing Travis all the materials is still sitting there looking. This is why certain agencies, for example, when we had to go down to Baton Rouge and deal with the Baton Rouge Police Department after they shot and killed Alton Sterling, a new mayor took over and they instituted mandatory de-escalation policies. This is why. Because before any of this happened, not even Ricky was arguing with anybody or fighting with anybody. Everything was fine the whole time until an innocent person with their hands up starts getting choked by a police officer. Here. Not even a close, I'm talking about arms outstretched choke. Travis wanted to keep his record clean so bad that he let an officer choke him. choke him like this, and still kept his hands up. Let his body get contorted backwards over a propane tank, and still kept his hands up. Now, of course, this is focusing on Travis. This doesn't show what's going on with Ricky over here with the other officers. But imagine if you're the older brother and your younger brother comes out there and is doing everything the police have asked him to do. And you, as the older brother, got to sit there and watch a police officer dang near choke the life out of your little brother. Are you going to be happy about that? Of course not. Nobody would. I'm going to leave that up there. I asked this outside the jail. What type of policing do we want going on in our neighborhoods, in our communities? That ain't going to cut it. That's not going to cut it. When you go and you put out false statements about citizens and say they did this and that and this and that, and say they used their body to bump you, effectively assault you as a police officer, and it didn't happen, I want to know why the cop who's actually looking at Travis, why hasn't he said anything? He knows an innocent man's being charged with hindering an investigation, hindering police. He's the one that was handing him all this stuff. Where are you, sir, public servant? Why didn't you step in and try to stop an officer from choking somebody who was only standing where you told him to stand? When the city puts this out, if they are mistaken in that moment, and you know that that's not the case, why haven't you said anything? Why is he still facing criminal charges for something that we clearly can see didn't happen? And this is what we talk about, that thin blue line, people not wanting to call things how they are. It's okay, just because law enforcement is involved, it's okay to stand up for the citizen. And everybody has left Travis hanging. So I'm going to stop talking, but first there is a demand. It is 3 minutes until 1:30. By close of business, the city of Rock Hill needs to drop these bogus charges against Travis. There's no reason. There is no reason whatsoever that this young man, again, with no criminal record, should be facing charges when we have video that shows he didn't do anything they said he did. He didn't hinder police at all. If anything, he's a victim. He's a victim of an officer who had a big attitude problem. He's a victim of police officers inadequately communicating with one another. He's a victim of law enforcement's failures on the scene. He's a victim of doing what law enforcement told him to do. And there is no reason why he should be charged. So we want those charges dismissed by 5 o'clock. I mean, we're happy to go to court and make that happen. But with this evidence, go talk to this officer. That's all they got to do. Talk to one of their own officers. He'll tell you. He'll tell you Travis did nothing wrong. So we want those charges dropped. At this point, Travis has a couple words he would like to say on his own behalf.
Well, I'm hurt that this happened, and I just really want my dignity back. I don't like my name being scandalized and, people putting out this and that on me. That's not the case. I mean, I'm 33 with no record, so that explains enough. I'm not a trouble person. I'm a humble guy, and that's that.
Good job. Good.
Thank you all. Again, I'm Montreal Belton representing Travis. And let me say before I start my comments that we applaud this is not an attack on law enforcement. And any time we as defense attorneys or civil attorneys or others have criticism of law enforcement, sometimes it's get twisted that we are anti-law enforcement. I know Mr. Bamberg's history. He has a family that history of law enforcement, and I too. Many of my younger years, my mother worked for the Abbeville County Sheriff's Department, and I consider myself a steward of our community, but also we have to call accountability where accountability are. We're here where accountability needs to be. We're here today because law enforcement has this information. They chose to write a statement that they knew was false, or very easily the top brass at the police department could have pulled the body cams of the officers that were on the scene and could have at the minimum written a letter to law enforcement, to the media, that was accurate. They opted not to. So we on our own had to go and get the information, and even though in America you should be innocent until proven guilty, there was an attempt of a smear campaign on this 33-year-old Rock Hill High School graduate, family man, works every day, who has absolutely no criminal record. Because they know the perception out there, particularly in this county, when you have an encounter with law enforcement, it must be the citizen, it can't be law enforcement. Well, in this particular instance here, it is law enforcement. And let me make this clear. We're not here to litigate the case of the older brother, Ricky, who's facing very different charges. He's not represented by our office in terms of the criminal matter. And I want to make that clear because there was also an attempt by law enforcement to conflate Ricky and Travis. And either by misinformation that was given to the media or a direct attempt by law enforcement. So I want to make this clear that this press conference here today and my statements are limited to Travis Price and Travis Price only, who's a law-abiding citizen, who's not a violent criminal, who's not a violent thug, and was there on scene, participating with law enforcement, complying with law enforcement, getting the information, the goods, the property of his brother, and at that point was accosted by an officer who obviously did not know what was going on, thrown back into a propane tank, put his hands up, and surrendered. And that was still not enough. And what's more disturbing about this is not the officer, even if we give that officer the benefit of the doubt that he didn't know what was going on, his comrades did know what was going on. And that's more frustrating because they stood around and watched that encounter and didn't stop it. So, as Mr. Bamberg has indicated, we're asking law enforcement by 5 o'clock today to drop the charges on Travis. But make no mistake about it. If they do not drop the charges, we are prepared and we will absolutely fight this all the way in the court of law. He has indicated he's not guilty. He will continue to maintain his innocence. And we're going to do all we can to clear this man's record so he can continue to live as a productive member of our society, paying taxes, raising his children without a criminal record. We will not allow this system to scandalize his name and, more importantly, to ruin the reputation that he has created for himself and his family here in this community. So I say to you all here in the media today, and I say to law enforcement, we're asking you to do the right thing. Certainly what you had going on with Ricky, that's for another lawyer and another day and another court. But as it relates to Travis, this was absolutely a travesty. And if there's anybody who's a victim of anything, he was a victim out there on the scene, and he has been a victim of the smear campaign that has taken place in the media over the last couple of days. And I hope that you all in here who've had an opportunity to see the truth will continue to demand the body cams, because certainly that will have the sound on it. I hope that the media will continue to demand the body cams, and I hope that you all will also ask the tough questions that need to be asked of law enforcement so we can get to the bottom of what happened here with Travis. And a man in America should not have to go out on his own and get video footage to prove his innocence. And the last time I checked our system, a man is innocent until proven guilty, but obviously that was not the case that law enforcement intended to display on Mr. Travis Price.
So we're going to happy to take some questions here in a second, but I do want to end you with this. And, you know, we've had a lot of people in the community reach out. You know, we've spoken with members of this community, and a lot of them have some of the same concerns that have been raised since this begun, which is the aggression level, the unnecessary use of force that is shown in this case. Again, going back to the fact that Ricky's still in medical in the jail, still with his broken nose. We see officer punch and punch and punch and punch and punch and punch. Right? And law enforcement says, well, he did this, he did that. Okay, that still doesn't justify the level of force that's being used to effect arrest. And it's a red herring to the public is what it is. It's someone earned they butt whooping is the message that they try to send. But we've shown you, if you just look at what happened with Travis, he didn't earn that butt whooping. He didn't earn that. And there are plenty of citizens, again, not all the officers, but there are officers who are overly aggressive, and they're policing the streets of America. And they're policing the streets of Rock Hill. And what do we want out of our law enforcement? You can arrest some people without acts of violence on that citizen, but others, and more often than not, the others look like us. They get the extra force used on them. They get punched in the face. They get choked, slammed to the ground for listening. That's the problem we're talking about. It's bigger than just Travis. It's bigger than Ricky, right? It's bigger than any of the names or the hashtags or the cases that we have seen publicized across this country with regards to use of force. The people up top in these agencies have to start paying more attention. If you got guys who are just scared of black guys, they don't need to be in a uniform, man. I don't dress like this when I'm not practicing law or working at the state house. Me and him might dress the same. And we don't need officers who are out there viewing all citizens just because of how they look or how they talk or what neighborhood they live in. I'm sorry, not everybody can live in the big house with the white picket fence. Some people are working towards that, like Travis is. The day he got out of jail, he got a good shower, a hot meal, and the next day he was back at work because he had to miss work the day he got arrested. Something's got to give. Something has got to give. So with that said, I will take any questions. Yes, sir.
Mr. Bamberg, Mr. Belton, the city, your case is a Rock Hill City Municipal Court case, right?
Correct.
Has the city solicitor's office, in which Solicitor Putman is the chief solicitor, has she been apprised of the video either from your office or by law enforcement? Because wouldn't she have the authority to either dismiss or handle this case rather than the police department itself?
The police department brought this charge, right? The ones on the scene.
Right.
Here, man, the one who put that in his hand. They brought the charges.
Well, I guess I didn't ask it properly. Once the police have made the charge, do they have the authority to dismiss it, or does the solicitor's office in the city have to do it?
Well, based on my experience here locally, absolutely law enforcement could dismiss the charges. But to your point, our office has not had any contact at this point with Solicitor Putman or anyone else in the solicitor's office for the city of Rock Hill. We intend to file all the appropriate paperwork and letter representation today.
Okay.
Or,
The person who was manhandling you, Travis, what is this Department of Homeland Security or is this Rock Hill Police?
See, that's part of the problem, right? Is at this point we don't even know the identity of the officers, right? The only reason we know they're officers is because they've said they're officers. We know nothing. Y'all know nothing. The public knows nothing, right? And that's part of the problem. We're here having to do a press conference to clear people's name with evidence that we would have obtained. We're doing our job. Other people need to do theirs. So I have no idea which agency. But the way I look at it, right, and they use it on citizens all the time, the hand of one is the hand of all. You remember there are people all over America in jail right now, not because they did anything, but because somebody they were with did something. And it's conveniently appropriate for citizens, right? But then when things happen on the scene, you have multiple agencies involved. You know, we like to question, like, well, was it this agency? Was it that? The hand of one is the hand of all as far as I'm concerned. Because everybody out there could have stopped this from happening and nobody did.
What we do know is that is the city of Rock Hill's cruiser that's their part that says police on the back. We do know that cruiser belongs to the city of Rock Hill. Who that exact officer is, we have no idea. I do recognize some of those officers out there from my work in criminal defense, and I can tell you unequivocally that some of those officers are City of Rock Hill officers. Now, there are a few there that I don't recognize, and I don't want to declare what agency they are from.
Does whoever had the authority to dismiss the charges by 5 o'clock have this video?
They should, because the Rock Hill Police Department has this video, as I understand it.
And have you told them, hey,
They had it before us.
5 o'clock EOB, this is it?
We just told them, just now.
Here, you mean?
Here.
Here, with y'all, in this room, we just told them.
Okay, you haven't filed anything with within the case, any motions or anything within the city case at the clerk's office? Okay.
Why would, there's...
I'm just asking. I'm
No,
not
no.
saying you should, I'm just asking.
There's no, based on the facts and what we can see with our own eyes, there's no reason for government to waste the money processing any filings as it pertains to this situation with Travis.
And let me make it clear, guys. They got body cams, and their body cams have video on it. So they actually have more information than we have. This is information that had to be gathered at Travis's expense to file and get information by the work of his attorneys to get this information. They have far more capabilities than we have. And if they were interested in doing the right thing, they've had since Tuesday to do the right
Do
thing.
you think the judge at the bond hearing saw the body cams before she ruled on bond for Travis and Ricky?
I don't think so.
Have you seen the body cam video
Not yet. We have not seen it
of
yet.
the family?
No.
I was going to ask with no audio in that video,
Mhm.
if when Travis was there kind of waiting and they were exchanging, he was giving them the stuff, if there was any kind of back and forth conversation going on, Travis, while you were there with the officers and they were handing you stuff.
Was there conversation?
Yeah.
There was. When he first walks up, he is told to stand back, which he does in the beginning. And then the officer who was handing him the items, they were telling Travis, stay right there, we'll tell you when you can get the stuff. And that's when they were making those transactions. He was standing still doing what he was told to do, and nothing more, nothing less. That's
No
all
other
he was doing.
conversation other than what you just mentioned.
Correct.
Can you tell us if there's any concern about that slight pause at the end of the video? Right
Where
at-
it slows down?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's just like a freeze in the data file. Okay, the timestamps, everything like that. That's how it came off of the system. So we're not missing anything that happened. The video just freezes and then moves like frame by frame. If that answers the question.
Have you also had a chance to talk to any witnesses out there?
No, at this point, honestly, the focus has still been on after reviewing all this, getting this dealt with, right, and then making sure that Ricky is okay as he still sits in jail. So we're gonna keep working. We will be talking with people. I have been in touch with SLED. I've spoken directly to Chief Keel at SLED, as well as the agents who are handling this investigation. Travis has spoken to SLED already, right? He's given his interview to SLED. So, I mean, we're effectively doing everything that we can to do our jobs and be good stewards of citizenship. And we're just asking the government to step up and do theirs, and the city of Rock Hill to do theirs. You know, so that's what we don't have any updates on that end.
I have another question, if I may. There is, and I'm asking, I'm not saying this, there is no legal constraint to keep the city from releasing body and dash cam video to the public, right? Even though they say that certain portions of it, including body cameras, are not subject to FOIA application, they still have the authority to release any and all videos to the public. Am I right?
As I understand it, there's a FOIA aside. Technically speaking, if they wanted to put it out,
They could do it right now.
they could. Correct.
I don't know if you're talking anymore, Travis, but can you just tell us how you're doing, especially after everything that happened and then obviously watching this video again, if you're willing?
And this is his first time seeing that.
Yeah, that's actually my first time seeing it, and you know, I'm still sore, I'm still in pain, you know. But other than that, I'm also hurt that my name and all that, and the way that I was scandalized, I don't like that, you know. Period. You know. But I'm good. I'm sore. I'm very sore. I am. But I still have to make an honest living. So.
I have another question, if I may. One of the things that you have not, Mr. Bamberg, you mentioned about your words, people who look like you. Mm-hmm. Is it fair and right to say that Travis Price was treated the way he was because he's a black man in Rock Hill, South Carolina?
Do I think Travis would have been choked like that if he was white? Absolutely not. I think it's not just race. Race is a big part. It's also economical, right? It's socioeconomics. It's like I pointed out again, and I always go back to Mr. Jethro Devane's case in Rock Hill. It's the neighborhood they're in. And Mr. Devane owns 10 properties in that area. And he was treated like utter trash because of where they were at, right? So between socioeconomics and the way that those socioeconomically depressed communities are treated by law enforcement, in addition to the fact that, let's just be real, those officers, and I'm not in their heads, but I got a pretty good idea, okay? Those officers are out there looking for people that they think are either known drug folks or whoever, okay? And they see Ricky, and his brother comes up, and they see him. And unfortunately, yes, they policed a lot more aggressively than they would have if these guys were 10 shades lighter. And that is what I believe.
Mr. Dacey, the unfortunate thing we have, particularly here in the city of Rock Hill with the DEU unit and these others, are these officers who are trained. They're policing these neighborhoods in paramilitary gear, with paramilitary weapons, with paramilitary fatigues on. They're amped up. They have a guy, Ricky, who they have deemed as a violent criminal, so they have all these officers there. And so naturally, it appears that everybody surrounding this situation becomes like the person, the target that they're after. And we cannot seem to get through, and I don't expect everyone to agree, but as Mr. Bamberg indicated, until we get officers to look beyond the color of one's skin, the neighborhood one's lived in, the kind of car they drive, and look at humans as humans and deal with individual circumstances as individual circumstances, we're going to continue to have this. And every single assistant solicitor with whom I have worked with in the last couple of years, I have said it, and I'm going to say it here on record today. Rock Hill is a powder keg. This may have been the flash, but the fire is coming unless someone in top brass, and I don't mean that literally, I'm not asking anyone to go burn down things, I'm not part of any protests or any of that, and I don't want that skewed, I'm using it metaphorically, okay? That we have a problem with the way that some of our violent task force units and these units police certain neighborhoods. And none of us want violent criminals on the street. But there's a way with dignity and respect on how you can engage with the public, arrest those who need to be arrested, and not take a man who's a law-abiding citizen with his hand up and choke him to the ground. And then the image out here of that dog, even with Ricky, if that image doesn't concern all of you, just as humans, if that were not an image from 1960s Alabama or Mississippi, I don't know what is. And it should concern all of you. It could concern all citizens. You got 5 or 6 men there, all got weapons, all got handcuffs, but then you still have to put a dog on a man that's on the ground, regardless of what he's charged with. That should concern all citizens, black, white, rich, poor, and other. And so that's why we're here today. And certainly this is dealing with Travis, but what happened to this man and the charges, and now if you run a SLED report, it shows that he has a charge out there. I mean, it's just absolutely, utterly uncalled for, and absolutely someone should step up and do the right thing. This is what this is about. Not about the officer there on the scene. It's about the supervisors. It's about the bosses. It's about those down there who can make a decision and them doing it.
So what would be the next step for you if these charges aren't dropped at 5 today?
If they don't voluntarily drop the charges, then you have to just run the gamut in court. And along with that comes a malicious prosecution lawsuit. Because if you decide not to drop the charges after seeing what we just saw, the only reason you're prosecuting this young man is to do so maliciously.
How long do you think that would take in the courts?
To what? Dispose of the criminal case? It just depends. It just depends.
But I guess if I may piggyback on that question, Rock Hill City Court, there are no indictments, right?
Correct.
There are no indictments, there's no grand
It's a
jury.
misdemeanor.
They literally could handle this as we speak.
Correct.
Correct.
The city solicitor's office, the
And to
police
answer your
department,
question about body cam, through Rule 5 of Discovery, they have to turn the body cam over to me.
but they don't have to do it today, they have to do it when
No.
they're, essentially
Correct.
when they're ready.
Correct.
Okay.
So they haven't turned it over to you? Is that what, or you just
The
haven't?
the body camera?
Yes. Have they
So
not given you access to it?
I know that during the Chiefs press conference, he mentioned, well, we'll show the family, et cetera, et cetera. I have not spoken with the chief. I have touched base with the mayor about the situation that was going on last week with regards to some of the people who were protesting taking things a little too far in an attempt to quell that. But I mean, they've got our information and everything too.
So that you're saying they haven't reached out to you?
I haven't got a call or anything like that, no ma'am.
Would you get the full video, or would you get like an edited version?
It depends what they want to give. At the end of the day, it's the videos are in their custody and control, and it's not uncommon for videos to be edited to some degree, whether they blur something out, whether they bleep words out, or whatever the case is. But I always try to get the full unedited video if possible.
But if it were to go to court, are they going to have to play the full video, or they would play an edited?
Correct, the full one, correct.
And let me say this, because Mr. Bamberg did mention, and I live here in this community, I practice law in this community. Obviously, my law office is here by design in the predominantly historically African-American community. We don't condone anybody rioting, tearing up things. Certainly people who want to peacefully protest and exercise their First Amendment rights, we do that. But I know sometimes things get missing, that you are just trying to light the fire and send people out. That is not our intention. We absolutely unequivocally condone any type of civil unrest that results in the destruction of property or the loss of life or those things. That we cannot condone what we are condemning the police for doing.
Correct.
Okay? We don't condone what we are condemning the police for doing. So our goal, Mr. Bamberg and I, we fight in court. That's the tool that we have been given, and that's where we intend to fight these in court. And so we're asking any of the people who support the larger cause for Travis to not be out there destroying any property or tearing up anything or blocking off any streets or any of those things. If you desire to protest, get you a legal parade permit and go out and do it legally and do it peacefully. And allow us to fight in court. You will not help Travis or the larger issue of police brutality by then doing the things that we're condemning the police for doing.
I have one last question. And I apologize if you were trying to get finished. If those officers were all in blue Rock Hill Police Department uniforms with nameplates and not wearing paramilitary gear, not in unpolice-like haircuts and beards and things, would this have happened?
I don't know.
Look, let me ask you this, right? If you go on the football field and you don't have a helmet and pads on, are you going to hit anybody?
No, sir.
There you go. Right. It's a national issue in America. It's not just Rock Hill. It's not just Homeland Security. Any agency that goes that route, right? Police are supposed to be a part of the community, right? You police the community a certain way. You're not in the military. So if you want to go in the Army, go in the Army. Do what my parents did. They joined the Army. My granddaddy joined the Army, right? If you want to have your automatic rifle with your tactical gear and all that, that stuff has a place. And there are instances, don't get me wrong now, there are instances in American policing where that stuff may be necessary. For example, a mass shooting. You don't want to show up in your normal uniform. You want to be protected. But just out here, like they were doing, sitting around on a regular day, again, if you don't have a helmet and pads on and you're on the football field, you ain't running into nobody out here. All right, thank y'all so very much.
Thank you so much. Mr. Belton, thank you. Appreciate your time. Mr. Price, thank you for your time.
I'm not just going to let you go.